Hello and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Cassidy. If it's not, thanks for always tuning into my videos. Today, we're doing a recommendation list. We are recommending books that have necromancy themes to them. I recently read 2 necromancy books in the last vlog I posted. Well, I don't know if it's last at the time of this, but I did just post a vlog where I read 2 necromancy books and to see if I like necromancy. And I figured, honestly, I've seen necromancy come up in a couple readathons as like a prompt, but it's very hard to figure out if a book does have those themes to it. I would say not every single book in this list is specifically the power of necromancy. Some is just like the idea of a dead coming back to life. As always, I didn't love every single book on this list, but these are all books that I know have these themes for sure, and so they're on this list. I will tell you what I rated the book normally and why I think it'll work for you or why it didn't work for me as we go along, so let's just get right on into things. Let's start with Sabriel by Garth Nix. This is a YA fantasy. It is more of a classic fantasy now. It's not modern anymore. It was published a while ago. I sadly didn't overly enjoy this one, but I do think I would have if I enjoyed YA books. Currently, I'm really leaning heavily away from YA, and I think if I had been the target demographic of this book, I could have adored it. So if you typically enjoy YA books, I would 100% give this book a try. I think the world and the magic system in this is really cool. There's like death gates and the ringing of bells to like keep spirits away, and we follow Sabriel, who is going to be the next Abhorsen, and the Abhorsen kind of keeps the dead at bay and keeps them like dead, helps people cross over, helps like bind spirits that are like evil to certain gates, and all this other fun and cool stuff. I do think that this fell flat a little bit for me in terms of character. It's very isolated. We really only hang out with Sabriel, her animal demon companion, and someone she saves along the way. And she just goes on a quest to figure out what happened to her father, the current Abhorsen, because something has happened to him and he is now trapped behind one of the gates, and she needs to go free him and figure out what happens and save her father and the land that is now going into chaos. Since her father is in death, things need to be rebound because all the demons and evil spirits are coming loose. It is a really cool idea, and there is a lot of necromancy in this in terms of like spirits coming to life and like evil beings, evil spirits crossing certain gates to then come back into life and like inhabit new bones or their old bones. It's really cool, and it has necromancy. I hope that you enjoy this. I know so many people love this series. It just was one that didn't work for me, but I think it could work for you. We're really starting this list off, honestly, I am not the biggest fan. I learned in my vlog that I'm not the biggest fan of necromantic books. That's not a word, but that's now a term. So a lot of these were just like flops for me, but I think if you like these themes in a book, definitely check them out. The next one is City of Dusk by Tara Sim. Honestly, similar problems for me. Is this book is supposed to be Tara Sim's debut adult book, and I struggled to find it adult enough for me. I found it very YA. The characters read really young. Their motivations were all kind of the way I find YA books, where it's just like, oh, we're gonna do this now. Like, it's just like a snap of a finger and this is what's gonna be done. I struggled with the pacing in this book. I felt like this book tried to do way too much, but I know Ashley from A Follow Through Fiction loved this book. So as I'm saying, not every book is meant for me, but could be meant for you. There is some strong ideas, again, with the world in this. The character in this, who is the necromancer, I found very cool. I really enjoyed how the necromancy works in this, and kind of like, again, the binding of the dead and to keep the dead dead and not have the dead come back to life. Really, really cool. We're following 4 main characters who are like princes and princesses of their each little like magical land. They're like, and they have different types of magic. So we have a necromancer, we have a shadow wielder, we have like a sun wielder, and then we have just like an elementalist, I believe is what I would classify them all as. And they're kind of fighting for the throne, but they're struggling on kind of being friends or being enemies because they're all around the same age, they're going through the same problems, but like they're also competing for that throne. So again, it reminded me very YA. I think our protagonists are technically like 20 something, but it just didn't hit adult enough for my personal taste. But again, if you prefer a YA book, I think you will enjoy this much more than me. Let's go with the last YA on this list, which is The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik, and finally one that I loved and adored. This one is a little bit borderline. It depends how much you're going to stretch necromancy, because I don't think we actually visually see any necromancy in this book, but it's talked about, it's hinted at, and it's discussed. So I felt like it fits in this. The Last Graduate follows our protagonist who goes into a school. Is the first book called The Last Graduate? me having a brain fart. I can't remember if this is the first or the second book, but I'm talking about the first book here. So whatever book cover I put on here is the one I'm talking about, and it's the first book of the series. I have yet to continue the series. Why is the brain fog happening? Anyways, in this book, we follow our main protagonist who is going to a school that is out to kill them. Essentially, in this school, the only place that is safe is your bedroom, and even that is like borderline. And you have to fight to stay alive. There's like demons coming in. You're learning how to use your magic, how to properly survive. And at least in like the first half of the school, there are like a little bit of wards, and the school's trying to like protect you. But in the basement level, all the wards have completely fallen, and no one knows how to fix them really. So the graduating class, when they graduate, will have to go through that bottom level to get out to the real world, and so that they really have to survive and fight all of these demons. It's such a cool concept with this world, this school that's like out to kill you. I really, really adored it. We follow a protagonist who kind of struggles to make friends, but when the cool popular guy keeps saving her life for some reason, they end up kind of attaching to each other and making a bit of an alliance to get through the school year, and she kind of becomes a cool girl. But she's also trying to hide the fact that she has the ability to use this dark power that's looked down upon. And it's just like really interesting. I really liked this one. There's some good banter between our protagonist and the cool guy. And I loved the idea of this, and the execution of it really worked for me. Our main character is unlikable, but I love an unlikable character, but I'm putting it out there for you. I know sometimes this didn't work for a lot of people. There is a little bit of info dumping. The protagonist uses a lot of like monologues inside of her head. But it worked for me, and I think that you could like it too. And then I'm going to put a touch of light on this list by Thiago Abdullah. This is an indie. It is currently a semi-finalist in Spiffbo number 8. I'm rooting for it to win, at least at this moment in time, because it's a 5-star read for me. I just read it in my reading indie fantasies that scream fall, because look at this cover. It's fall. I just hit myself in the head with this. And this one, I would say the Necromancy, if you're counting Necromancy in terms of like the Walking Dead and someone bringing the dead to life in terms of that. So the dead in this don't really have like brains. They're more like zombies, but there's like a plague affecting the world, and there's like blood that if people drink, they could either survive it or be turned into like a zombie. And I think that that is really cool. I really like the way it's done in this. I can't really explain much to you about what this book is about, to be honest, because it's so complicated. It is definitely a high fantasy read, and it really throws you right on into things. It doesn't really like take its time to get to know the reader. Like, you're just thrown into the thick of things. There's like a prequel called A Prelude to Ashes. I didn't read that before reading it, and I wonder if that would have helped with like the throw into battle. But it felt like a slow start just because I had to learn everything at once, and it took me a while to grasp things. But by the end of this, I was sold. I was in love. There are 3 characters we're following. We're following a prince who's kind of dealing with the plague as it really affected him close to home, and he's trying to kind of be better than his brother that died. He is the second son technically, but now the first because his brother died. That happens in the first chapter, so don't worry about spoilers. We're following an elite warrior who has voices in her head, and she has a griffin companion, which is really cool, although you don't see a lot of the griffin, but he is in there. And then we follow our gifted hunter who has a curse where she can feel everyone else's feelings, and it like overruns her to the point where she just wants to kill everyone. And she's in like a cool little clan, and it's really interesting. I really, really enjoyed this one, and I do think that the way that the plague and the zombies are written counts as necromancy, but I don't want to say too much. The next one I'm putting on this list is kind of a stretch again, but not really. It depends what you're counting. I'm really going for necromancy themes, not necessarily like heavily a necromancer, so I'm thinking about like people staying alive, coming back to life, things like that. I can't really tell you much about this one, but I do think if you're looking for a book that counts, I do think that this trilogy as a whole counts, which is the Tawny Man Trilogy by Robin Hobb. I think that there are specific characters in this that kind of bridge death in ways that I can't really say. And if you read the series, I think you might guess what I'm saying. And it would even, I think, extend to the last book in the last trilogy a lot. In the Farseer trilogy, I think the last book would also count as necromancy themes, but I do think we get the discussion of characters that have not necessarily accepted death properly, and I think that counts a little bit for necromancy for me, and I would count this as necromancy themes. It's definitely not like like heavily apparent. We don't have someone like wielding the dead. We don't have someone binding the dead to stay dead. But I do think that there's just a little tidbit of necromancy. This one's a little bit hard to tell you about because it is the third trilogy in the Realm of the Elderlings, although it's only the second trilogy that follows Fitz. So we're going to go back to what the first series is about, which is the Farseer series, and that is about Fitz, who is the bastard son to the king in waiting, and when his father figures out that he's around, he ends up giving up the throne and deciding not to be king so that his bastard won't be the next one on the throne after him. And we follow Fitz, who is then used as kind of like a weapon because the king realizes that it's better to have bastard as your assassin rather than someone that's out there that could maybe one day claim the throne with a little bit of his blood. It's really interesting. It's a slow character study of what it's like to be Fitz, is essentially how I like to explain it. And this series continues off where the last one in the Farseer trilogy ended, and we just get to spend more time with Fitz. This is my least favorite trilogy in the Realm of the Elderlings that I've read so far, which is a very unpopular opinion. I'm also going to throw it out there that I personally think live ships also counts as necromancy themed, just because people die on, like, 3 generations of a family die on the ship to make the ship come to life, and they kind of put their personality a little bit into the ship in ways. So I think that also could count, depending on how loose you're getting with the term necromancy. Then we're going to put Blackstone Heart. I read this in my necromancy vlog. This is through and through necromancy. This is a grimdark fantasy. We are following our protagonist who wakes up buried, and he has to dig himself out, and he realizes that his heart is missing besides 1 shard of obsidian stone, and he kind of realizes that his heart is made of obsidian stone and that he was dead and now he's alive, and he has to go across the world, across the continent, to find all the shards of the obsidian stone that makes up his heart, and each shard has a memory that he's lost because he doesn't really remember anything about who he is. The book really plays with what memories are, what makes a person, whether a person is who they were at one point or whether the effects of what you go through along the way matter, like if your soul is the same always or if you can change based on your different interactions as a human. It's really cool. It's really interesting. I gave the book a 2.5. I gave the book a 2.5 in the end because I do think there is a lot of walking. The problem with grimdark is that it's very, again, isolated in terms of we pretty much only follow our protagonist, their dead companion, and we see a couple other companions along the way, but we don't really follow anyone for long enough periods of time to really feel connected to them, which I think I really struggled with in the book, and the book is very repetitive, but I was so intrigued by the world in this that I do think I will be picking up the second book at some point, and I do think that if you like grimdark, this would really work for you. It is hard in a grimdark book because it's so character driven, but you really do have to still root for the character, but it's hard when your character is really bad, and this character is definitely bad, but I do think the author did a good job of making me root for them. Like, I wanted them to survive. I wanted them to do the bad things to get them to their final goal. And I really appreciated that. And I think that definitely if you're a grimdark reader, you should check out this book. I definitely think that it's one that's really cool for necromancy themes. The magic is super cool, the way it's done. There's like wizards against the demonologists, and it's the way the world and the history of the world is done is super, super cool. And if we're being loose with the term necromancy, I think you could also count the Chorus of Dragons series. Specifically, we have a demon in here who, like, kills people and engulfs them and their personality and their memories into herself, so it's kind of like they never died. And I think that kind of is a stretch. I'm not sure, like, I'm mostly using necromancy as, like, a theme of, like, the dead not dying. And so it just really depends how much you're going to stretch it. The Course of Dragons series starts with the Runa Kings. This is actually the second book that I'm holding up. The first book is with my sister so that she can read it. I hope she gets on that soon because I would like someone to talk to about the series. Runa Kings follows Kieran, who finds out that he's actually the son of one of the, like, political houses, and he doesn't really want to be. And then something happens and he tries to run away, and there's just, like, a bunch of people after him. This book is so convoluted. It's so hard to explain. So there's demons after him. There's gods after him. There's dragons after him, there's the political house after him, there's like a convent of nuns and monks after him, and there's just a lot of people who want Kieran because Kieran could be destined to save the world. or he could be destined to destroy it, and no one really knows which one he is. I love the way this is told. It's told from two characters. Kieran starts his story, and then Talon, the demon I told you about, says, no, your story did not start here, it starts here, and tells Kieran's story from a different starting point, and then the two timelines eventually meet up, and we also have an overarching narrator saying things as we go, because the book is also a book about a book, because this whole thing is written as a book. And it's really, really cool, convoluted, it's fun, and I would count it for necromancy themes if you're willing to stretch it a little bit. And the last book I'm putting on this list is actually one I have not read, but I obviously know it has necromancy theme, so I wanted to include it in this book, which is Gideon the Ninth, which is literally, I've always been told, lesbian necromancers in space, and it's like a locked room, isolated setting, and that's pretty much all I know about this book, so I can't really tell you much more about it, but I do obviously know it has necromancy in it, so I wanted to include it in this video for you. I hope you found your next necromancy vibe book to read in this video. I think it's perfect for spooky season to read one of these, and if you're interested, definitely pick one up. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji just to say you were here, leave me a skull emoji, because, you know, the dead, skull or bones, something like that. And if you'd like to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon are all linked in the description bar below. Have yourself an absolutely remarkable day.